being recorded. And like yesterday's session, we are going to try to have a hard stop at 12:30, but post the webinar, we are going to have a networking piece like we did yesterday that was quite successful. And for those that would like to stay later, can have an opportunity to speak with some of the Hopeful team and maybe for about 10 minutes just to kind of get to know them. Maybe there's some additional questions, and hopefully I'm not throwing that on you guys because I know we technically said a 12:30 hard stop, but hopefully you guys can do that. Also, I know that some of you had sent your inquiries via email or text. Thank you for that. I'd like to welcome you to our second day, second of the 5th day of our Expo, Fundraising Expo. Just please, please keep in mind that this is a webinar. So any questions or comments you may have, you can use the Q&A chat at the bottom of your toolbar, and we will answer your questions accordingly. Hopeful team, we have Alex, Eric, Helen, and John De Silva. They will be here to present on democratizing your base and using social media to attract new donors. So for those that have asked numerous questions about social media, these are your guys and gal. Please let me know if you're having any sort of technical difficulties, to shoot me an email at office@BCHPCA and I'll be able to help you through that. If you do have any questions, like I said before, feel free to just put them in the Q&A box. All right, so Hopeful, on to you guys.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me and having the whole team. Publicly, we're excited to chat today. This, especially when it comes to the palliative and hospice care community, it's something that's very important for me to be talking about how they can be finding success and how you can be finding success on social media. And I'll get into why that specifically is for me during this presentation. But we'll jump in. So democratizing your base and using social media to find new donors, something that's been talked about quite a bit in the space, something that's been growing, but something that really has been an open question for years now in the nonprofit space when it comes to social media fundraising. Something we hope to help out with today. Now, let's go over a little bit about what the points are for today. Firstly, of course, going to go a little bit about who we are, why we're hopeful for the future, and what we're really excited to be showing you today and building in the space specifically for social media fundraising. And then really going down the rabbit hole of what does online giving look like today? How does it look like both from the nonprofit and the donor perspective? What are COVID-19's effects on the entire fundraising landscape now that we are coming to the end of almost our first year of living in this situation? And then going into the social media side, how is social media going to be the revolutionary piece here in terms of your fundraising strategy? How can you use social media to find very committed recurring donors to be able to shore up your entire donor base, make sure your fundraising is going successfully, and making sure that it is a very, very important part of your fundraising strategy for years and years to come. And then strategies for doing that, how to tell your story based on successful metrics that are coming in through your social media, not posting for the sake of posting, but actually using successful, proven data insights to be telling your story that it's hitting the most important donor bases that you may not be aware are actually following your content, and making sure that they're most compelled to be giving to your cause at the most important time. And then finally, bringing it all together, speaking a little bit about some success we've had at Hopeful working with our clients, both in the US and Canada, and how some of them have leveraged their social media to drive donations by over 800% in terms of their online giving as a whole. So some exciting examples there at the end. And of course, Q&A, and happy to connect with all of you. So jumping in from here, who am I? I am the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder, Alex Chivov. I'm Toronto born and raised. You'll notice I'll be talking a lot about storytelling during this, and that is not an accident. I have always been very interested in storytelling, very interested in how technology and the creation and content are interrelated. I was a journalist at the National Post, largest newspaper by circulation in Ontario and in Canada at one point, and I was also a journalist at Politico in Washington, D.C. After that, I moved over into the sales world. I've sold in digital marketing, advertising, and SMB technology in many different spaces. But from the nonprofit perspective, that is something that's always been very near and dear to my heart. I'm a pro bono web developer and marketing consultant in the nonprofit space. Have been for over 6 years now. I also sit on the boards of several nonprofits here in Toronto. These range from anything such as the Canadian Autism Society to the Regent Park School of Music, if anyone has familiarity with those organizations here on the East Coast. And then overall, just doing my part to make sure I can have as much of an impact as I can in such a critical space in our country, but around the world in general. So in terms of who we are as a whole, Hopeful is a startup that has been around for almost exactly 2 years. Our second birthday is on January 22nd, which is exciting. We are a member of the Ryerson DMZ Technology Accelerator, which was just ranked once again as one of the best university-affiliated startup accelerators in Canada. We're also a member of the UC Berkeley Skydeck Accelerator in San Francisco. We are one of 16 startups, just to correct this, chosen out of over 2,000 international applicants. And this is a program specifically designed to be helping us build our technology, reach more nonprofits in the United States, and also to be able to make sure that we are creating as much of an impact as we can for our community of nonprofits that we serve. As a team, we are a remote first organization. We're very, very focused on living in the new normal. We're based in about 3 different time zones, 4 countries, having everyone serving in different capacities, joined here by John Paul, our Chief Marketing Officer, Eric McDonald, our Chief Revenue Officer, Helen, our Digital Marketing Coordinator as well. And this is a team that continues to grow and grow. And we are all happy individually to connect with any of you if there's any interest in our individual capacities within Hopeful or anything like that. So now that introduction has been done regarding Hopeful specifically, I did want to start off this presentation properly with why I was very excited to be talking about this to all of you. The reason I've been so involved in nonprofits, and my family has for well over a decade now, is in about 2005, so 15 years ago now, my grandfather, who's very dear to me, unfortunately was diagnosed with a very unfortunate form of laryngeal cancer. Was told that he only had about 2 weeks to live. By the end of it, was already starting to lose a lot of his faculties, but ended up holding on for about 104 days. Now, I was very young at the time, but this was something that was incredibly stressful for my mother. She was a single mom. It was very hard on her and the rest of our family to keep things together. She had myself and my older brother to take care of, and I had a call with her just before this presentation last week and wanted to really ask her about that experience, because I remember that being able to work with our hospice workers that were working with us and my grandfather was something that was tremendously helpful for her to get through the struggle. It was tremendously helpful for me to work with the private practitioner who was working with my grandfather. And it really stuck with me for a very long time. That was really the counseling and the support in that very unique time of grief and loss is something that cannot be replicated by any other kind of support system, as all of you provide. So I wanted to include some quotes that my mother specifically wanted to pass along for this presentation. She specifically started her charity work because of the work that was done working with my grandfather, and it was something that was incredibly, incredibly powerful. So I really wanted to just make everyone know that this is something that's tremendously personal to me, and I'm more than happy to have as much impact as I can just by providing this kind of information. And if anyone has any follow-up on your organization, more than happy to connect with you one-on-one and provide what value we can, because this is something that is incredibly important both to me and everyone who's had to deal with that kind of very, very personal sense of grief and loss. But now that we've done that, let's talk a little bit about the ecosystem as a whole. So nonprofits in North America have raised about $450 billion annually, traditionally speaking. For the majority of them, local donations from private individuals make up the lifeblood of their revenue. Whether you are just serving your local community, whether you're serving an entire province, whether you're serving half of Canada, those individual donations often go up and down the food chain regardless of size, and is incredibly important to not only be having donors that are giving on a regular basis, but having a very diverse set of donors that you're working with. Being able to have 3 donors consistently writing $3,000 checks, just as some example numbers, is great, but your risk for you as an organization, should one of those 3 disappear, is significantly higher than if you had 30 people writing similarly sized checks, but smaller, in order to be able to have a much more consistent recurring giving program there. Now, on the donor side of things, what's important about this is that, especially with the onset of COVID-19, about 50% of the revenue I just mentioned was previously attached to physical fundraising. And many organizations are now forced to go digital in order to make up that gap. But this is something that has also accelerated a trend that is already been happening. And given the sense of how many of you looking at the participants are in this today, that I think you're sensing it as well, is that social media is now very quickly coming online as the new form of online fundraising tool. Before COVID-19, it was growing about 25% to 40% year over year as a means of fundraising. But now for the new generation of donors, so millennials and Gen X, they have now reported that social media is the top driver of giving for them and what inspires them most to give. So having a key strategy in place to get your message to this new generation of donors, such as myself, is incredibly important to be able to make up that fundraising. And this is only going to keep growing. We may be coming to the light at the end of the tunnel for COVID-19 with the vaccine now, but the culture shifts and the practice shifts that have happened as a result of that are here to stay, and it's very important to keep that in mind. And social media will continue to replacing top fundraising strategies such as email, peer-to-peer, physical fundraising. That is going to be something that is a trend that continues to happen. So a quote here that came out from the NP Engage study just before COVID-19 is that online fundraising is increasingly important to nonprofits across the board. Online donor retention has become slightly easier to maintain as donors warm to monthly recurring donation options. Mobile fundraising and mobile optimized donation pages are more important than ever, but securing mobile donations, and this is something that's key here, is generally more difficult than on traditional desktop browsers. Nonprofits should devote energy specifically to developing mobile fundraising strategies. So why do we talk about mobile? The reason we talk about mobile as I'm talking through online giving is that this is exactly where people are going to be donating in the future, regardless if it's directly on social media, but they're going to be donating often and they're going to be donating at a consistent basis. Online giving, as I mentioned, has already been increasing as a whole at an increased rate, 23% in 2017. The last figure I saw for 2019 was around that 40% mark I mentioned. And giving more and more and growing higher and higher as a result of COVID-19. And 55% of donors worldwide prefer to give online with a credit or debit card. Considering now that most people have their credit or debit cards or PayPal accounts connected directly to their phones, this is a very easy option to be looking at in terms of online giving fundraising. In order to have someone just quickly click donate onto your page and have all of that information preset. You do not have to do the heavy lifting anymore to have people donate to you just at a click of a button. The only work you should be focusing on is telling the most important stories that you can of the impact that you are having every single day, and making sure you're telling it in the most compelling way possible, so that that person has no issue continuing to click that button and hitting that donate on a regular basis and knowing that they're having an impact. So to reinforce this, as I've already been mentioning, online giving is growing, but this is specifically how it's growing. Bank and wire transfer still makes up about 12%, but you'll notice now that things such as PayPal, digital wallets, text to give, mobile money, these were comparatively statistically not even available, But with that 40% growth, this mobile money option, PayPal, these options will keep on growing in the future as people, from an overall macro perspective, start moving away from cash and bank and wire transfers, start moving over to a cashless society, but then also have less friction involved in the actual donations that are involved here. So being able to make sure that you have options to be taking those online donations, that is an absolutely key piece here. And I can't stress enough the growth in this space that should be being looked at. Now, in terms of the mobile option again, is that one thing I do want to stress whenever I do give this talk is when you're looking at a mobile strategy and looking at reinforcing having your mobile donations in place, yes, you can have people still going to your website and donate. That is not something we would ever say. You should definitely make sure you have a strong web strategy on your desktop browser in place, but think about in terms of the democratization of your donors. Think about the getting those donors who normally wouldn't be writing those big checks and are doing it from the easier convenience of their phones. The conversion rate on your online donation pages is already relatively high, about 8%, but the number of transactions being completed has already gone up by 50% in the last year alone. So when you look at the overall trends in the space, number of donations completed through desktop, yes, is going down, but the amount of money associated to desktop is also going down as well. These are gifts that are now shifting towards mobile rather than someone being on their laptop on a website and donating. And these are not insignificant gifts either. The average gift by someone on their phone is $79. Someone on their iPad is $96. And half of all the nonprofit website traffic in the total has been coming through mobile and tablet users. So if you can be able to have as much visibility for someone to go see something you're putting on your Facebook page, see something that someone saw on your Twitter page, have someone of influence retweet something that you said. I believe just last week, Pablita, we were working on some strategy where a government official retweeted something that the association themselves tweeted. That kind of impact, you can have someone then, multiple people go on, and then you can actually have them specifically in 2 clicks giving you $79. And if you can multiply that effect, it's great.
I actually just want to really highlight something really quick. I like the fact that you brought that up because we had gotten, so this was during the Children's Grief and Bereavement campaign that we did 2 weeks ago. And I happened to tweet, after having that chat with you, I happened to tweet 3 of the big MPs in BC, and one of them was the Minister of Defense, Harjit. And it was so nice to see him retweet the 3-liner that we did. And I think what happened after that was really important on a provincial level. That tweet was retweeted almost 10,000 times, just because he had engaged on a ministerial level, on federally, and it got awareness. So yes, absolutely, just getting that one person retweeting is a huge thing. Next time we have to associate that with some sort of dollar, bring some money in.
So think about it this way then. You have 10,000 people retweeting a message. That message, 10,000 times $79, that's $790,000 potentially. That's the potential upper limit of one tweet being properly targeted towards your donors. Is that going to happen every time? Hopefully, with Hopeful's technology, one day it will. But at this stage, that is the aspiration that you can have on social media, and it is such a powerful thing with social media, especially given that just released just last week. People are now becoming more inclined to give due to, let's call it the 2020 fatigue that set in. People want to be making a difference, and being able to be in front of them when they make that decision is absolutely key. Now, moving specifically into the palliative and hospice care space, and I will lean on John Paul to speak about this a little bit as well. But when we were thinking about this and doing our research, one of the things that comes up is when someone has such a loss in their family, in their immediate circle, other nonprofits traditionally target those who have been personally affected by the cost. If someone passes away from cancer, someone passes away from Alzheimer's, and you know how many different diseases are applicable here. But say if a cancer nonprofit tries to raise money from someone who has either recovered from cancer or passed away from cancer, that is where they're focusing on. And it's unfortunately in the space, from what we've been seeing, is almost a concept of competition. Is you either donate to the hospice or the palliative care practitioner or the center involved with that end of life care, or you donate to the cancer nonprofit. That is not the case and should not be the case because of what I was talking about at the beginning with my story. This is a specific way that you all are providing a very, very special way to let people go through their grief, let people move on, let people actually accept that this is a natural part of life. And it is something that is very important because that is a tremendously traumatic thing to happen to a person, to lose a loved one. And that proper care and support that all of you provide is something that should be able to stick with them and should be something that can be used as an excellent strategy for your support so you can continue carrying on that position. John Paul, do you have any thoughts on your side about this? I know we had spoken about this earlier.
Thanks, Alex. I think everything was pretty much covered. It just highlights the issue that fundraising is already challenging, and just adding on that other layer of extra challenge when it comes to palliative care, and is the donor receiving the message of the uniqueness of palliative care versus the affliction that was affecting the patient.
Precisely. So having that divide available is key. But Leah, do you add something?
I do. I just had a question for Margaret. I know it was a slide prior, but her question is timely. Curious to know how applicable the data is to rural BC. Like I mentioned before, we do have hospices that are in rural BC. Is it broken down in this way, or the data for Canada, North America, or global data? I'm just asking about the data in terms of the mobile versus traditional kinds of giving.
Absolutely. So this is Canadian data that we're using. As much as possible, we try to stick with Canadian data or US data when we are having these kinds of talks. With rural BC, happy to try and do some research as well over the coming weeks and months to see how we can dig into this. But this is pretty close to it in terms of Canadian data, if that answers your question, Margaret.
Yeah. And then maybe Alex, just adding on, one of the reasons why the supporter aspect of the Hopeful platform was developed was specifically to identify those regional differences. And Alex is going to be touching on that later.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Well, in that case, so Margaret, this almost builds on top of it specifically. So this is the National Cancer Institute from last year. But specifically, I wanted to touch on a little bit deeper on the unique opportunity for healthcare, palliative hospice care that is presented. So a really interesting thing that we've seen when we were doing our research is that in terms of receptiveness to social media giving pledges, to stories on social media, the healthcare nonprofit sector has significantly higher rates of return on donations, between and I'll touch on these numbers later as well, but about an average between 3 and 9% conversion, which is huge. And why is that? So the reason for that is that you are all at the forefront of sharing health-related data, things that affect people day to day, things that are inevitable, whether unfortunately be cancer, whether it just be more minor afflictions. So this is things that people are coming to on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So as a result of that, the ability to capture them for information through whether they're gaining knowledge, whether they're looking for support after a loss, whether they're looking to communicate with the physician directly, whether they're trying to just grow the community and seek advice, that's something that's fairly unique there in terms of being able to tell your story compellingly. And in terms of that and growing on what I was mentioning at the beginning, for millennials and Gen X donors, this is a number that continues to grow. This is a new generation of donors that's not only potentially ripe for storytelling in terms of donations, but for education. Being able to show them through social media very important information about, well, perhaps COVID-19 now, even though we're coming to the end of it, but whether it be any kind of afflictions that are happening, whether it be something common to their age group, this is all information that you can target and something that they have higher rates of not only eyeballs on the screen, but actually engaging. Now, I did want to quickly pause here before we get more deeply into everything what I've been talking about with social media to see if there have any other questions that have come up. I'm looking at the chat here, but want to always make sure if anyone has any ideas, we can take a quick pause here and answer those. Nope, looks like we are pretty clean. Okay. Perfect. All right, so moving on then, everyone. So going deeper into the core of this talk for social media, this is really going to be focusing around how do you take the overwhelming amount of data that you're presented with social. Being able to see that there are 95 million Instagram posts a day, there's 31.25 Facebook posts per minute, 6,000 tweets a second. So how do you go from posting for the sake of posting to knowing exactly when, where, how to be creating content efficiently to be able to get the outcome that you want in terms of fundraising? So how that works is a little bit of a story in and of itself. So historically speaking, nonprofit revenue is been growing at a pretty fast clip, Facebook being the primary generator of donations. What we found is that with the 3.5% number, this has been increasing quite significantly, especially this Giving Tuesday, which was by all accounts a blockbuster for fundraising. We found that Facebook is the primary platform for nonprofits, generally in terms of their fundraising strategy online. But that is also because of a capacity limitation. Facebook is the oldest at this point of the major social media platforms, but it's also the most saturated. So being able to get a proper message, being able to fundraise properly on Facebook becomes harder and harder every day. So that's why we are always advocates of differentiating your different social media channels, being able to be on LinkedIn, being on Twitter, being on Instagram, making sure that you have all the options available to be posting, having the tools in place to be posting and easily and getting the return so you can see where you have those opportunities. Because sticking on a platform that becomes more and more saturated, it becomes harder and harder just by the nature of how this data is held to be getting consistent eyeballs and consistent donations from this place. However, what is important here is that these are still platforms that have billions of people on them and have hundreds of millions collectively active users, not only daily, but hourly. So being able to leverage all of these channels is a key way for you to be getting online revenue from people who you may not even know are actually looking at your content, but are actually ripe for engagement. So being able to see potentially whether there's another community down the road that they are actually very interested in the care that's happening within your community in rural BC for whatever reason, being able to see perhaps there's interest down south in the province, perhaps there's an east-west coast connection. These are things that we've actually seen before of finding new donor bases based simply on the data and by getting out there and connecting with as many different platforms as possible. And then connected to, as I was speaking about before, for health nonprofits and for all of you specifically, 9.5% is was all online revenue through Facebook versus the 3.5% I mentioned above. So the opportunities here to be driving more through social media because of all the people that are more engaged with health-related matters is only going to keep growing. It's very important to be following this closely. On the final point, because I know speaking with Pablita and having spoken with a few of you already, I know that there's a little bit of hesitance in Facebook as being the primary channel, but Twitter is the close second here. Twitter is a golden channel for fundraising now. It is the easiest way, as I mentioned with my mathematics before, to be getting a lot of viral micro donations quickly. And this is an engaged platform. over half the people who engage with you on Twitter take some sort of action. That is an astronomically high conversion number by any kind of social media metric conversion. And this is something that should not be forgotten at all. So the one takeaway here is to be thinking about that too. Now, Pablito.
Yes, managing questions. We do have a question from Tarani. She was wondering, do you know the best time, day of the week to post on social media that will help with the online fundraising?
So that is actually why we also exist as a company. So that all depends on your audience. It depends on what kind of content you're bringing out. For example, Tarani, I have a food blog as a side hobby of mine. For me, I know food Instagrams are generally the best to post during lunchtime because that's when people are eating. However, if you're going on LinkedIn and posting LinkedIn, generally speaking, depending when you are posting, then is around 8 a.m. So it really has to be, it really depends on specifically the type of content you're targeting, the type of user you're targeting. And that's something that we provide within the Hopeful tool of basically being able to assess on the data that we're providing, when is your best time of day, and being able to track through there. So it's a very individualized piece of data, one that's pretty easy to assess once you have the right tools in place, but there's no universal answer to that. And I hope that answered that question. But continuing down, and this will be building a little bit more on that question as we go through as well. In terms of leveraging social for fundraising, this is going back to the beginning. 39% of millennials and 33% of Gen X donors are most inspired to give what they see on social media. Before, email was king on online fundraising. That number has now fallen to about 28% prefer email. So that's a fairly large gap in terms of preferences for donations. So that's something that's very important to be focusing on, is where are the trends moving and getting on top of that. But in terms of time of day, although time of day is not necessarily something that you can be doing on an individual user basis, targeting fundraising to a donor base based on individual milestones is. There's already something that's built into all major social media platforms where you'll be able to see when someone's birthday it is, when there's a milestone, they announced a new job, anything like that. This is something that has existed within all major social media platforms for a very long time. Being able to target that fundraising, being able to target that it's my birthday, I want to give to a good social cause, especially when there's already tools in place to have birthday gift fundraisers in place, that's something that's very, very important. And that's something that is when you want to go from democratizing your base, but then maximizing the revenue you're getting from these donors on social media, these kinds of strategies are important to consider as well. Now, in terms of what metrics you should be tracking specifically, keep it simple. This is not a space that requires you to be running as if you're digital marketing or an ad agency. We're not trying to calculate click-through on reach. We're not trying to calculate what your conversion rate is on shoes that you're buying from Amazon. This is a very altruistic transaction that's happening from a goodness of a person's hearts. You need to know what stories they're compelled to tell and how are they getting in there. So how we measure it is likes and impressions. That is how far your net's getting cast. How are people's eyes getting onto this individual social media post? If they're double tapping, great, but the fact they went by it, if you have 10,000 people seeing it, then it becomes generally a numbers game, and that's important to see there. Now, on the other side of things, specifically, you have comments and shares. If someone is going out of their day to write a comment, if someone is going out to share your content, that is a person you should be reaching out to, because that comment, that share, especially given that the average time attention span on a post for social media is less than 2 seconds, that's a person who is very, very important to your cause to be able to engage with. So that's really what we think about, is how wide can you cast your net and who can you convert immediately? And that's really all you need to be focusing on. As the operation gets more sophisticated, perhaps you can get more complex in how you target, but really simplicity is always king. Now, coming into the kind of the conclusion. So everything I've talked about today is not something that we've made up. The Hopeful platform was officially launched in August of this year to the wider public. This is an organization based in Minnesota that has been working with us since our closed beta. And they were really applied many of these principles that I've been talking about today. Finding where your donors are, measuring how wide your net is being cast, measuring who can you immediately convert, and then being able to see what kind of pieces of storytelling are actually resonating. In 6 months, they raised their total online giving donations by 875%, just by using simple tactics to be able to tell their most compelling stories to the right people at the right time with their data-driven results. And as a happy accident, or as a related accident, their Instagram, which is their main channel, had significant triple-digit growth on all of its main metrics, followers, likes, and impressions. So next step size. The next steps here is really a reinforcement of what we've been talking about. Know where your donors are, tell your stories in favor of what you know is really leading people to engage, and then using purpose-built tools for the nonprofit space to be measuring this. We now have an ecosystem that Hopeful is a part of, but we have so many more that are finally coming online of bringing advanced for-profit tech, but built for the nonprofit sector. You know, there's no reason to be using for-profit tech that is built specifically for the for-profit world when the model of nonprofits and altruism does not necessarily mesh in that same manner. Being able to find those right tools to use to grow your fundraising specific to your organization is absolutely key. And that brings it to what the most exciting part about all of this is. So artificial intelligence in the nonprofit space is what a lot of this is going to be leading to. As I've been talking about a lot of different data points today, the most important part of this is being able to focus on your data optimization and everything related to AI. So if you're struggling, you don't really know how can I find these likes, these impressions, these comments, these shares, what is it that's actually leading people to engage? These are not expensive tools and they're not complex tools to use anymore. And it's really just designed to be able to bring you down to the level of you can easily comprehend everything that's going on in your organization in a very easy manner. And the results are already proven. Research from last year has shown that AI has the power to boost profitability by 38% in the United States, increase their GVA by $14 trillion. But from a nonprofit perspective, you can perform data analytics on anything. You can do analytics on sets from donors and supporters, social media metrics, how it correlates directly to your actual fundraising, which is what we do, being able to see specifically patterns into how you can be getting people to engage not only online, but offline as well once we eventually go back to physical events. This is a very important piece of technology that research should definitely be done on as well. And the reason I end off with the artificial side of things is because everything that I'm talking about in digital marketing is related to this one statistic that brought Hopeful into existence, is that when we founded this company, we found a statistic that 5% of nonprofits globally were using data in every decision they make. This is a unacceptably low number considering the amazing work each and every one of you do and the impact you could be having if all of the data was being properly leveraged and managed to be properly targeting the people it needs to be targeting. So being able to use these simple artificial intelligence techniques to scale what you have on social, making sure that you don't need to be a digital marketer to understand this, being able to use it to see what keywords, images, hashtags, what text, the minor details that most people do not have the mental capacity as a function of our biology to absorb, making that possible, and then finding out how to capitalize on those new trends and make social fundraising a repeatable and scalable process, no matter what the size of your organization is. Now, as a quick pause, I think a question did just prop up from Vinny. So Vinny Probably, do you want to read it or should I?
Yeah, no problem. Vinny asked, Facebook and Twitter have maximum engagement for online revenue in healthcare space, but how do nonprofits in various sectors such as education, mental health, etc., decide which of those platforms would work best for them?
Absolutely. And that's a great question, Vinny. So generally speaking, there already is research on the trends of what happens. So for example, education nonprofits typically do fairly better on LinkedIn, just because they are dealing more with more macro trends on a national level and often have professionals that do sit on LinkedIn be working there. Healthcare, as I mentioned, primarily on Facebook, somewhat on Twitter. Those kinds of trends are easily available online. But again, I'm always an advocate for individualized targeting of these things. Being able to look at it from, being able to look at it and being able to also consolidate your different channels and have tools in place that you can see an easy comparison is incredibly important. So for example, being able to have your Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram side by side, very quickly you can see within a week's time, even depending on the frequency of your posting, what is the channel for you? Because these are not hard and fast rules. I'm sure all of you at some point or another have seen all the different things that can go viral seemingly at random on social media. These things are done both completely by accident, but also with intention behind them too. And you need to really find what works best for your lane, and being able to customize your storytelling to where your lane is what the key message is here. Building on top of that, so Vinny, I know you asked about corporate funding. If you could elaborate on that, and then Jessica, I will get to your question after that as well.
Yeah, because she said corporate funding, question mark, and then so we can customize and pull the data from different sectors as well. Oh no, it wasn't a question, but what were you speaking of in terms of corporate funding? I think that's what.
Oh, so in terms of corporate funding, I mean that, so for the trends generally with education nonprofits, because of that wider macro lens, an education nonprofit generally are of larger size. So we find that their engagement is either better on LinkedIn because they are getting corporate support from the local corporations in the community, or they are specifically one individual school that is, or a region of schools that's being supported by a nonprofit. So that is where often government and corporate funding is more in play. So that's a reason behind that as well. And that's exactly right, Vinny. They're essentially looking for corporate funding more often than not. So that summarizes it well. So Jessica, to get to what AI is specifically, so AI is artificial intelligence for short, is a technology that has been around for about 5 years now, but really come into the mainstream in the last 3 years. Highly prevalent in the for-profit world, but now trying to be built online in the nonprofit world. 3 primary goals here, and it's really just take any kind of data that you have from your various different tools. So if you're familiar with, use of CRM platform, I know Sumac, a partner of ours, is in use by a lot of the association. Being able to take different data points that you have for anywhere from tens to thousands to millions of different rows of data in an Excel sheet, and take a look at it and see, okay, these are commonalities that a human person generally wouldn't see between a person, their age, their occupation, their location, and then give you simple insights. Artificial intelligence is essentially a way to leverage a computer brain to give you insights into data sets that would be too large for the human brain to actually derive insights from in any reasonable point in time. So I hope that clarifies that a bit more. And happy to talk about it further after the presentation as well. Okay, I think that's all the questions on this side. So wrapping up then, guys, in terms of continuing on the AI track, so it makes AI-based tools are designed to make your life easier by automating your routine tasks as it relates to your data. So improving your finance and human resources operations, fundraising, most importantly, external communications, all of that is done by AI by working off of data. It takes the guesswork out of day-to-day decisions out of your operations by showing, based on these prior success rates that you've had based on the data that's out there, we can show you this is the most efficient path to be automating these tasks. This is what you should be taking action on in order to be having this kind of a result. It essentially takes over, let's call it the back office guesswork of many different aspects of the organization, highly in use in the for-profit world, and something that definitely is going to be a significant value in the nonprofit world as things increase. And you can already see the use of AI by nonprofits is projected to grow 361% in the next 2 years alone. So this is something that's right on the horizon. We are, as an AI company, are very big advocates of getting that trend started sooner. And that's it. So I hope this was informative to everyone. I know we have about 10 minutes left, so open to questions. I do want to end off on the note with this is all my socials if you'd wish to connect, but we are also working, Pablita, if you'd like to elaborate perhaps a little bit of having a special member offer that's going to be put together in the next few weeks between Hopeful and the association, and really excited to provide our technology to all of you and make you hopeful for the future.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Alex, for that. That was fantastic. I think we were getting a bit of questions coming in. That was great. There was a lot of engagement. I appreciate that. And just to kind of elaborate on what Alex was saying, in terms of for the past 2 years, the association has been providing surveys. One was at the conference they held 2 years ago. And last year, the association also did a membership survey to just really look at the information and services that members needed. And the one thing that members really talked about was about getting some ideas about fundraising, tools, programs, things that were out there, and things that would speak to their needs and help them with this. So this is obviously where this expo is coming from. But within the association, myself on a provincial level, using Hopeful for the past several weeks, I've definitely seen how it has helped me, being the only staff member at the association, in terms of even just the platform of having all of our social medias in one place. I can log in on a daily or once a week and kind of see what resonates with whom and during what time. I think that's important. And that's the story that nonprofits and definitely our hospices in BC have, is that they're either a volunteer team, they either have one staff member, or they do have a full out staff that can help them. But I think this is just providing some further insight. So yes, we are working together just to see what types of service program that we can roll out for the members. So yes, so stay tuned for that. We'll definitely be able to share that information with you. I did see that Jane Sturck, she sent in a message. It says, does Hopeful help organizations do this?
Yes. So we specifically, as two reasons for this, Jane, just to expand, we have consultants and our management team are available to anyone who uses Hopeful. Our calendars are available to book in time free of charge to be going through this digital strategy. As an impact first company, we want to be sure that you are successful as possible. We are also, as we continue to grow and bring our features online, like to have very regular check-ins with all of our clients that are working with us, because any kind of suggestion that you tell us that would be helpful, we directly put it into our roadmap. And then that helps us grow. And then you get those kinds of targeted insights that are specific to your organization. For example, I know there was the question earlier about, Margaret, your question about data from rural BC. Now we know having that information from rural areas and being able to pull those data sets, that's something that would be helpful and helpful to the association. I'm already thinking about that. We got Slack open. They can see the tech team talking about it already. So we help where we can.
Any other questions? John, Paul, Eric, Helen, comments?
I think Alex said about everything I was hoping to say. So between Alex and Pablita, thank you so much for teeing in. It's always nice to get some words from the field as well and let you share your own experience with Hopeful. So honestly, anything I'd be saying at this point is just redundant. So great work to everyone. Thanks for summarizing it so succinctly.
Oh, I think I just saw another question come in. Fantastic presentation. Many thanks. Yeah. No problem, Jane.
Enjoy, Jane. Thank you.
So if there's no other questions from anyone else, I think what we'll do is, we did end a little early, so perhaps for any of those, we'll do the same format like we did yesterday. For any of those that want to hang on for about 10 minutes or so to speak with the group, that might have some questions a little bit more specific, feel free to stay on, and I will end this meeting, and then we'll go from there. Thank you again for those that did attend. Obviously, this expo and having these presentations today is for you. So we appreciate in you being in attendance. I also want to let you know that tomorrow we'll be having our third day of our expo, and we're going to be highlighting SOSJ, one of our good funding partners, and myself. We're just going to be talking about some programs and services that are going to be for our members, and SOSJ is going to be speaking, which is Susan. She's going to be speaking about the seed grant funding that they have for 2021 that hospices and our members can apply for. So once again, thank you again, everybody, and hope to see you guys tomorrow.